Air Force One, a simple picture of Air Force One. The plan of attack was take a new picture of Air Force One, summer 2009. Air Force One flying down the Hudson, going towards Manhattan, F-16 on its wing, taking pictures. Goal was to get a picture of Air Force One by the Statue of Liberty. People in Manhattan saw a big, heavy plane 1,000 feet above the water coming down the town. People started moving out of Manhattan thinking it was September 11th again. I will let you know that every agency in New York, 411, 911, anything that ends in 11 was advised. Everybody knew it. But myself, being a colonel in the Air Force, I had been taught well to be a leader. So had these folks. As a great leader, they immediately disavowed all knowledge of being told about Air Force One coming up the thing. It ran in the media for days. This is why we were not the men in black. We took away from President Obama's message for 3 days. CNN, Fox, anybody wanted to know how much it cost to fly a 747 up and down the Hudson to just take pictures of it. The beauty of this whole thing was I had retired, taken President Bush back to Waco right after the inauguration. This was my deputy, presidential pilot number 13, that had to deal with this. My vantage point up in the cockpit, 20 feet up in the air, I've seen everything from kings and queens at the foot of the stairs, but I've never seen a more memorable moment as in the Midwest. During the campaign of 2004, taxiing in, I can hear all the radios. I can hear the Secret Service. I can hear the staff. As I'm taxiing in, the staff's letting each other know that at the foot of the stairs it'll be Senator so-and-so, Congressman so-and-so, local business leaders, etc. But as I'm taxiing in, I can actually see the people lined up waiting to come up with the stairs. And the president will come down and greet them. As I taxi in, I see a young man, a young Marine in a wheelchair. The young Marine is at attention from the moment I turn off the taxiway to make my run into the ramp. A young Marine who's lost both legs. A young Marine that's at attention in his wheelchair, saluting with his left hand. As the president comes down the stairs, you can hear the staff telling, okay, we got to let the president know that the young Marine has limited use of his right hand. You can see the staff maneuvering. You can hear him on the radios. As the president bolts down the stairs, he does as he always does. He meets the senators and congressmen and hugs and holds and whatever. But he comes up to the young Marine. As he's coming up to the Marine, a young staffer comes up and you can hear him talking to the president. All of a sudden, you see the president move the staffer away, and you hear over the radios, the staffer tells the rest of the staff, the president says he knows how to greet a man, back away. The president comes up to the Marine, he does what he always was famous for. He drops to his knees. He hugs the Marine. He salutes the Marine. He brings the Marine's family over. He takes care of the young Marine. He took care of all the military. At that point, he points up to the cockpit. It's now my job to take care of that Marine. I was going to do it anyways, but that's all I needed was a point from the president. That for me, that was to have the young man back in his office, so when he returns, he wants to sit down and talk with the man and his family. The young man's wife was there with a 1-year-old baby. That's what the war was about. That's what the United States military is about. That's what President Bush was about. In fact, all presidents are about. But that's what we're about with the wounded warriors. They need our help, and that's why I'm donating all the proceeds to them. This is what America is about. September 10th, 2001, we did an educational tour in Florida. This is him coming off the stairs in Jacksonville, Florida. After September 10th, we then moved over to Sarasota, Florida. Sarasota, Florida, the plane was put on a ramp at the Sarasota airport. Plane is always protected. You're going to laugh, but the protection we use is the cones you see in the picture here. That is our protection. 60 feet off the plane, we put these little cones. Outside the cones, United States of America. Inside the cones, Air Force One's property. And then what you do inside there, if you can see in the picture, there's a big African American who was my top cop, a guy named Will Chandler. 6'4", about 240, just an enormous man. We give him everything that he needs to go ahead and protect that aircraft. If you come through those cones, he's yours. I mean, he is going to take you down. So what he has to do is he's got 4 lines of defense. He's got to come up to those cones, and he's got to figure out whether you mean harm or not. He walks up to the cones. The first line of defense is he's going to talk you out of it. Big man, figure out what you're going to do. You may be just taking pictures or you may need harm. He'll talk you out of it. Second line of defense, he's going to knock you down. He's going to basically arm-to-arm, hand-to-hand combat. He's got a clip-on tie. He don't want you choking him, so he takes the clip-on tie out, which then exposes the scar from his ear all the way across his neck where he got in a knife fight as a kid, which he obviously won. He's just letting people know that. If that doesn't work, he shows you the 9mm. If that doesn't work, he talks into his lapel. A guy comes out of the stairs of that plane with an M4. Poof. And that's the end of your visit to Air Force One. This is how we secured the plane that day. The plane was ready to go the afternoon of September 10th. September 11th, all of us got ready to go out to the plane. 3 hours prior, we all show up at the plane. Plane was ready to go. While we were moving, terrorists were moving up and down the East Coast, hijacking airliners. We had no knowledge of this. I know the media took a hit at President Bush saying that he had to have known about it. I guarantee you he didn't. None of us knew what was going on. They caught us with our pants down. As I show up that day, I did what every Air Force officer did early in the morning. I did my PT. I had to run 1.5 miles in 13.5 minutes. All right, Marines and Army guys, laugh your head off. Hey, had to do 40 push-ups, 40 sit-ups in 2 minutes. You can laugh again, but that's the reason I came to the Air Force. So. Did my part. I showed up to the plane, waited for the big cop to give me the signal to come across. He gave me the signal to come across. As I came across, he went ahead and saluted. Sir, no one was killed or injured last night. That's all I want to hear from him. If you're going to take away from the President's message of the day, you kill or injure somebody at Air Force One, you will take away from that message for many a day. I go up those stairs. Crew chief comes up. Hey, I'm a pilot. I don't do any of the dirty work. So I got a guy. Guy comes up, tells me he's done everything. Got the oil, got everything all checked, gives me the status of the jet. Then we got a secondary guy, flight engineers, a chief master sergeant in the Air Force, same thing, comes up and lets me know the status of the jet. President Bush was famous for trying to find something wrong with, just joke around with you, sarcasm. So I would make sure that nothing was wrong with that jet. I would go through every room in case he walks by, because I don't want him to give me the attention-getting step he was famous for. Just kind of hit you in the chest and go, Tillman, I don't want that. So I went through each room, was inspecting each room. The flight attendants, 10 of them on board, they would proudly show me each room. As I got to the first room, the president's bedroom, everything perfect as always. His flight attendant was taking care of business. All of a sudden, I get a phone call. Over the plane's PA system, the radio operator, Colonel Tillman, pick up a white phone. We had white phones and beige phones, about 87 phones on board. White phones, normal communication. Beige phones, classified communication. I pick up the white phone. Radio operator says, sir, come on upstairs immediately. As I come upstairs, this is what the radio operator shows me. The first tower has been hit by an unidentified aircraft. At this time, there were no words coming to us from any of the agencies. I call them the voweled agencies, NSA, OSI, FBI, you name it. There was no communication with these folks. The plane has over 40 phone lines, 40 capabilities available to it to get communication. None of those lines were going off at this time. It was an aircraft accident that hit the tower. I told the radio operator, go ahead and take a look at it, because we knew we'd be going to New York, because there's going to be obviously lives lost and damage. We assumed we'd be leaving to New York shortly. I go back downstairs, start working through the rest of the jet. Radio operator, Colonel Tillman, pick up a beige phone. That's kind of my signal that something's gone wrong. I pick up the beige phone. He says, get up here immediately. We're executing plan such and such. I go running upstairs. This is what the radio operator shows me. They now have footage of the second airplane hitting the towers. At this point, all the phone lines are coming alive. Every agency on the earth wants to know what our status is and how we're going to be able to move the president immediately. That was our plan of attack. The other part of it was, we were told at that time that there were a group of about 9 aircraft hijacked, 1 over Florida, and we were a target. We were a sitting duck. My plan was to move the jet at that point, to get it out of the way, let the president come to another location, and we'd move him that way. Talking with the Secret Service, stand by, we're about to make the decision. Second picture of the second tower getting hit. All of this footage was from normal television. So all the plane had at that time was an antenna to hit ground-based television. It wasn't what it is today, where it has the ability to get satellite. So we had basically a tuner, the radio operator, tuning it to get all the stations that he could get to go ahead and get footage on this. Luckily, all the local stations had gone national. So all the footage was off the Today Show, Good Morning America, etc. As we're sitting there waiting to get orders as to what to do, we're executing a plan to move the president. You all remember Andy Carr leaning over the president, letting him know the country's under attack. President addresses the children in the elementary school, then moves to the room behind him. He's now sitting there talking on a classified phone with his advisors around him. You can see Karl Rove, you can see all his top-level advisors giving him information. So he was advised at that point of what's going on. My boss then explains to me that the president wants to move immediately and head back to Washington, D.C. I'll let you know, none of the plans we were about to run had taken the president back to Washington, D.C. When they wrote these plans, there was no idea that a Texan was going to be in office and all he wanted to do was go kick ass immediately. The plans were not designed for that. The President of the United States came running to us as fast as possible in the motorcade. At the same time, we got word that the Pentagon had been bombed. Okay, not had been attacked by an aircraft, but had been bombed. This was kind of the fog of war. If the Pentagon's been bombed versus an aircraft flowing into it, what does it mean to anybody? Anything different? Yeah, there's a ground-based attack now as opposed to airliners being hijacked, so it's more significant. Taking them back to Washington wasn't going to be the right answer. Pentagon bomb, bombs going off around the mall area, that's what we were past at the time. The president comes running to us in the motorcade, 747, capability to start all 4 engines at the same time, 2 APUs, everything's up and running. President starts and hits the tarmac, the right side of the plane's running, we bomb sweep everybody coming in the left side. Plane's ready to go. We've got everybody on board that we need. We start taxiing out. Secret Service comes to the cockpit, lets me know that the shooters have seen somebody at the end of the runway. They need me to take off opposite direction. Take off with a tailwind, not a big deal for the 747. Tremendous capability. We're extremely light. But the guy at the end of the runway, the concern was they said he had a long gun. He'd come up to the side of the fences, and they had him in his sights, and the service was running to him immediately. I took off opposite direction. Okay, Mr. Ryan, you had all the formulas, how to move and all that stuff. I'm a simple pilot. For me, all it was is you pull back, the houses get smaller, you push down, the houses get bigger. Now in the civilian community, they pay me a hell of a lot of money to make that median perfect every time, and I'm very thankful to it. But that's what we did. We took off, rotated out, climbed out roughly about 9,000 feet per minute. The goal was to get away from the shooter. Now, a lot of good old boys in here and good old ladies, I know you've been in fields before and you've seen planes fly overhead and you've had your guns and you've tried to shoot them. Now, you've probably been like, damn, I missed him again. Well, the chances of you hitting him is extremely low. So that's the theory I was using. The faster you go, the quicker you climb, the quicker you turn, chance of the guy not hitting you. The guy at the end of the runway was the same thing that we countered the whole day. He was not a threat. It was a man that came with his kids to the end of the runway to go ahead and see Air Force One. He had an old VCR camera, the old ones you put on your shoulder. Not a good day for him. But one would only guess that his kids were introduced to the Secret Service, and they're probably servicemen, you know, they're Secret Service guys today because they love it. We climbed out of Sarasota. As we're climbing out, Jacksonville Center advises us that we have traffic overhead descending into us. They've shut their transponder off, and they're not talking to anybody. At this time, I wasn't sure what the status of the hijackers were. It's possible they could have been overhead us, and they could have followed us out, and now they were going to descend, crash into us over Florida. Pretty far-fetched, but I wasn't going to take any chances. So at that point, we started moving out towards northern Florida. The controllers then advised that as we moved, the airliner held its pass. Turned out later it was an airliner that had lost its transponder, switched to the other transponder, but had not made the subsequent call to Jacksonville Center. We turn out to the north. At the same time, the president's downstairs with his top level. He's got Andy Card down there, the military aide to the president with the football in the Secret Service. On the time, he is on the phone with the vice president who's in a secure location. The vice president passes to the president that Air Force One is next. Doesn't know how it's going to happen, but we are the next target. What he said was, Angel is next. Angel is the classified call sign of Air Force One. Very few people knew the call sign. So for somebody to call in and say Angel is next, pretty credible threat. At that point, I asked the Mill Aide for military jets to cover me, have any kind of fighter support, as well as an AWACS, some kind of radar plane overhead. We start working our way up the northern panhandle. As we're starting to move along, the radio operators passed me that the president has just given the authority to the fighter pilots to shoot down the final airliner that has been hijacked. We had planned to take the president into Washington, D.C. still. We were working our way, maybe taking him towards Camp David. At that point, the FAA advises the final airliner has now made its turn over the Ohio Valley and is starting to work its way into Washington. It is on a direct line heading into either Camp David or Washington, D.C. We abort the plan to take them back into Washington at that point. We start moving out into the Gulf of Mexico. As we start heading into the Gulf of Mexico, it's pretty much a time compression. Within the first hour, everything had occurred, but it seemed like it took hours to make things happen. We then get word the flight heading to Washington, D.C. had crashed. It's off the radar. All of us, to include the president, thought our own fighters had killed Americans. It was the sickest feeling I've ever had in my life. This is all that's left of that airliner. The true heroes in my mind of September 11th were the people that took control of this aircraft again. And unfortunately, they crashed it, but they didn't bring it into Washington, D.C. If that plane had hit Washington, D.C., it would have made, thousands would have been killed. So in my mind, they're the true heroes and a true memorial to them at that point. But at that point, we really thought the fighters had taken that plane down. We subsequently learned 20 minutes later, after accountability of the fighters, that no, they had not attacked the aircraft. The aircraft, for some reason, had gone down. And now we know how. As we're heading out to the Gulf, we get word from Houston Center, Air Force One, you have fast movers coming up at your 7 o'clock. Not a big deal. We'd ask for fighter support. I go to the mill aide. The mill aide then tells me he has not asked for the fighter support yet. We're being jumped by aircraft that we have no idea who they are. At the same time, he lets me know that the Air Force has advised them that there are foreign nationals in the Gulf of Mexico training in our fighters, and they're heavily armed. Once again, luck of TIllman. I got guys on my wing, I have no clue who they are, and they're coming up on me fast. Houston, we asked the question, how fast are they? Houston comes back, they're supersonic. They are trucking at us. But we get the faded radio call that I'll never forget. Air Force One, Cowrie 45, flight of 2, we are your cover. The beauty of the whole thing was the fact that they were speaking perfect English. Might have been a little Texan, but they were speaking perfect English. They were not foreign nationals. They joined up on us, fighter on each wing, and they protected us for the rest of the day. The president at that point makes the decision. He wants to get to the ground because he needs to address the American public. We take the president to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. We land there. As we land there, crop dusters are all over around us, and the fighters are rolling in on them, et cetera, making sure that they stay low to the ground. An unknown individual comes off the New Orleans Lakefront Airport, a civilian in a light aircraft, and he's, unfortunately, my angle coming in was coming right over New Orleans, and he's taken off, coming right at me. The fighters go ahead and call out, hey, Air Force One, we, target BRA 275, 162, la da 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 da. I explain to these guys that I'm a heavy guy, very proud of the fact that I can take a meal and go to the bathroom. What are you guys talking about? They tell me I have unknown aircraft off the nose. 2's going to roll out. He's going to go ahead and identify him and splash him if necessary. Even a heavy guy knows splash him. I go ahead and ask the fighter guy, who has shoot-down authority? You do. That's the coolest thing ever. I pick up the phone. I call downstairs. Flight attendant answers the phone and said, hey, let the president know the fighters on the wing say that I have shoot-down authority. All I can hear is a little chuckle in the background. President, everybody laughing because TIllman thinks he has shoot-down authority. We go into Barksdale Air Force Base. When I land at Barksdale, I've never seen so many B-52s on the ramp. We taxi by and the president gets out. He addresses the nation. I immediately go into their command post to try to find a place where I can get the president of the United States underground. They give me all the secret places, and I'm very thankful to shake hands. I come running back out to the plane. The wing commander then advises me that I've either done the smartest thing or I've done the stupidest thing. Hell, I'm a colonel trying to make general. I wanted to be a very good optimist. Hey, let's go with the smartest. Guy said, yeah, it's a very secure location. The dumbest thing you did, though, is all these planes have nukes on them. We're doing a nuclear exercise. If anybody had been following you, you brought them to the wrong place in the world. Gave the man a little hug, told him, hey, that's our secret. Still didn't make general. President of the United States then made the decision he needs to get back to Washington, D.C. We wanted to slow things down, so we brought him underground. The plan was to take him to Offutt Air Force Base, get him underground. Departed Louisiana immediately, brought him to Offutt, got him underground. He had a chance to talk with the nation's leaders and folks all around the world. He stayed underground for a limited amount of time. When he left the plane, plan was to spend 12 to 15 hours there at Offutt until we could get Washington secure. At this point, we could not confirm Andrews Air Force Base would be secure, nor the route from Andrews to the White House for the helicopters Marine One. So we were delaying to try to figure everything out. The president goes underground, talks to a group of people. I go into base operations trying to get everything set up for the recovery. A young airman comes from behind base ops. Sir, I think the president's heading back to the plane. No, I don't think so. He said he'd be here 12, 15 hours. He goes, no, he's in the wing commander's car. Guy was waving, and all that stuff. I was like, that's my guy. She immediately gives me a ride out to the aircraft. I get on the aircraft, come up the stairs. President Bush is already waiting for me, a bad sign. he goes ahead and gives me the usual, Tillman, it's time to get home. Everything was serious. Don't let me make levity of the whole situation. It was serious. Flight attendants were crying around him. The president had his arms around him, letting him know, get back to work. We got to take care of America. He goes back to his office. I leave off at Air Force Base, trucking home. There are no radio calls on any of the frequencies. We, with a couple other planes that were associated with us, were the only folks flying back home in the entire United States. An eerie feeling. As I start heading back, they're pulling fighters off the major cities, Chicago, Milwaukee, et cetera. Fighters are rolling in on us. Did I need them? No, but it's cool. They were taking care of business. They were the military letting the president know that, hey, we're here, we support you. As I start heading down, going back home, I want the fighters that are behind me to go ahead and cover me and bring me into Washington, D.C. The reason being is those two fighters were from Ellington Air Force Base, the President's Guard unit. I couldn't have written history any better. They eventually caught up with us over the Shenandoah Valley and made a 360-degree turn to allow them to catch us. At the same time, the United States Air Force sent fighters from Andrews Air Force Base off our nose, fighters from Langley off the right side. It was a giant furball over the Shenandoah Valley with all these fighters. Protected them all day long, doing a lot of things, and then here in the end, going to get killed by my own folks. We moved the F-15s where they belong, way high to do the big shoot down. F-16s, we let them join up on the wings. The F-16s that were sporting us all day, they came underneath us to go check out Andrews. F-15s running on the tail, F-16s coming on the wing. All right, when you say on the wing, if my hand is the fuselage, my thumb is the wing. On the wing is on the wing. This gentleman decided to come on the fuselage. So he came inside the wing. So all those things you've heard about, you know, aerodynamics being screwed by a guy in front of your wing and all that kind of stuff, it's true. But it is the neatest thing ever to have an F-16 right there. So neat, the whole staff is looking out the window as well, because that's where the guy was. He slowly moved out. We came into Washington. As we descended into Washington, you could see the Pentagon and smoldering. That was the first real sign that we actually saw of any kind of damage into the American public. 2 days later, we take the president on, once again, a covert mission to McGuire Air Force Base, helicopter into Ground Zero. He goes to Ground Zero. He sits on the destroyed fire truck trucking with all of the firemen. You remember the days of the guys yelling out, George, you know, take care of business, and you know, we can't hear you, and the president gets up there, America can hear you. And that's what we did for the next 8 years. We took it to the American people, and the president took care of business as well as all of you folks. This picture, the American flag being raised over Ground Zero, is the coolest thing ever. Got the picture sitting on my desk, signed by President Bush. Still sits on my desk now in the civilian community. I work for Discount Tire. Just a little plug for Discount Tire, but best tires in town. Shortly after that, the President of the United States made the decision he wanted to go to Afghanistan. We could not get him into Afghanistan. Afghanistan was the Wild West. Impossible to defend against a bunch of guys, horseback and camels with rockets. You just can't do a lot against that kind of manpower. Next event was Baghdad. Early 2003, the President made a decision, we're going to Baghdad, we're going to go have dinner with the troops. At that time, there's only about 4 to 5 of us that knew about it. Senior staff, his chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, Dr. Rice himself, and then eventually they advised me to come up with a plan to try to get him into Baghdad. This is the picture of the Baghdad airport. After I left that meeting, I thought, you know, this is crazy, because the president was adamant that I could not use military support on this mission because we were scared the military would go ahead and, you know, all of you in the military, you know, if you learn something, you pass it up your chain for fear, you know, someone's going to make fun of you or whatever it is. But by the time you tell one guy, 100 guys know. So we could not take that chance. The president wanted to make sure that nobody in the region knew about it so that no serviceman or woman would be injured. I took this picture with a lot of intel reports, plotted all the mortar fire that hit the airport, all the RPGs that went off, all the rocket attacks on aircraft, whatever it was, I plotted them all. There was one location, thank God, it was a hammerhead at the end of the runway that had not gotten attacked. Okay, Army, Marines, you know why it hadn't gotten attacked? Oh, come on, even Air Force guys. Air Force guys, range of a mortar. Yeah, Air Force guys knew that. So it's totally the function of the mortars. The mortars could not reach that far. Big river there, what the guys would do from the town, they'd bring in their Toyota pickup trucks with a mortar in the back, cross the river, go ahead and fire. A guy on the airport would say to him, hey, the mortar hit the corner of the taxiways Charlie and Delta, significant damage, whatever. That guy would log it in, elevation such and such on the corner of Hussein and Main where I fired, log it in, he's ready to go. I plotted all these for 2 weeks. Came up with a plan of attack. My problem was I could sneak them in there. I'm positive I could sneak them out, but I had to pick up 60,000 gallons of gas. By the time I landed there, I would have an hour's worth of gas, and I could go into my escape zone into Kuwait. But I needed gas to get out of there. The backup plane also had to go to a foreign country and get gas. I had to defend against these guys. These guys are the guys who could sit in their backyard as you're coming into Baghdad and gun you down and then go back to the barbecue. You had to defend against them. Plane, highly capable, didn't want to take a chance. 2 747s required. 2 planes that we have. One's a decoy, perfectly identical. One plane went into a foreign country as a backup, unnamed foreign country. The problem is when he went into that country, declared an emergency, he landed, waiting on us. The country then arrested him. They surrounded the aircraft and told him he had arrived unannounced, totally illegal in that country. State Department had told me that once everything was out in the open, they would go ahead and advise that country that everything was fine. The problem is President Obama's pilot, Scott Turner, he was the guy sitting on the ground in this country. He kept calling me, hey boss, they really are going to arrest us. How much longer? That's going to be like another 2 hours. Oh, you're killing me. Yeah, hunker down. Okay, got it. That's what he did. He couldn't say anything until actually 2 hours and 45 minutes later after landing. Now, that number came from the fact that once you did an incident at the airport, it took 3 hours for all the locals to basically muster and start shooting into the airport. So we gave the president a little over 2 hours to go ahead and meet with the troops. Plan was to take him out of his ranch in Crawford for Thanksgiving. He goes to the ranch 2 days prior. Everyone thinks he's going to have Thanksgiving dinner at the ranch. All the news media were told that he, Bush 41, President Bush, Barbara Bush were all coming in, family all coming in. That was let out to the media. Our plan of attack was to sneak him off the ranch. So what they did was they had one guy stay on the ranch as a Secret Service agent, talking into his wrist all night long, letting everybody on that facility know the president is still there. So not all the Secret Service were briefed in. Days prior, they had a black minivan, and they would keep bringing it on and off the ranch so that everybody got used to this minivan leaving. Game day. President, Dr. Rice get into the black minivan, they leave, go off the ranch. Nobody thinks anything of it. Secret Service guy that's read in the whole day, whole night, just sits there talking in, yeah, president's in the swimming pool. President's on the back lawn. President's having his chicken sandwich. So everybody thought he was still there. He was so good at it that after we came back from Baghdad and we're flying out, the president had already talked to Mrs. Bush and let her know he was safe and everything was fine. She goes out and talks to one of the agents out front and asks the agent, do you know when the president's coming back? What's his status? They assume it's Bush 41 coming in. They say, yeah, actually he's on his way here right now. She goes, no, my husband. He goes, oh, he's out in back, ma'am. He is, yeah, he's out in the back, ma'am. Back lawn, moving in. Best ever. President gets on the plane in Waco. We'd taken the press from Waco. There's 2 press pools down in Waco. Told them to go to the Baylor gym. We picked the first pool, brought them out to the plane, took all their communications away from them, brought them on the aircraft. We then took the aircraft and went to Andrews Air Force Base. At Andrews Air Force Base, the second 747 was waiting for us. It had been fully loaded. All of my crew knew nothing about going to Baghdad. I wasn't going to take a chance anybody would call home or tell anybody about it. They got told en route. The crew back in Washington, D.C. knew nothing about it either. They knew not where they were going, nor did the maintenance guys. All they knew is they were told to refuel the jet, fill it full of gas, and be ready to go. The president gets off the plane. As he's walking from one plane to the other in the hangar, my top cop shuts down all communications in the hangar so nobody can call out. There are no cell phones. Yeah, a little capability. All you avionics guys probably know you can knock out cell phone coverage in a lot of places. Kind of knocked it out for a lot of people there. Unfortunately, we brought some press from Washington, D.C. that day. They were sitting waiting for us to group with the other press we brought from Waco. One of the men, we'd asked everybody to give up their cell phones. This guy had left a cell phone in his sock. This president gets off. He starts to use his cell phone to give away, so he'll be the first, news organization to have it. President walks by, gives him the little like that. But at the same time, the top cop, Will Chandler, goes ahead and introduces himself. A blinding tackle. Nails the man. All right, question for you. Whether you're Air Force, military, do you take the man with you or do you leave him there? Take the man with you. There's nothing that duct tape and rope will not fix. Brought the guy with us, not a problem. He understood now how important it was. President Bush re-emphasized to everybody on board how important it was, and that he would turn the plane around if the word got out, because he was not going to take a chance servicemen and women would be injured. President of the United States comes up to us. He's flying with us the whole time, gets a little sleep. Then as we're trucking across the North Atlantic, we have planes above us and below us, North Atlantic, typical, every 1,000 feet going across. As we start to head into the London coast, we definitely knew there was going to be daylight as we hit the coast, kind of scared to death that a plane around us would see Air Force One. As we cut into the London controllers, no one has said anything. Air Force guys, you know, we're jumping up and high-fiving each other. Everything's perfect. Then we get the faded radio call. London, is that Air Force One? Oh, you're killing me. It was British Airways above us, so we thought, well, you know, that's probably who it is. So we start making a turn. The London controller comes back and goes, no, that's a Gulfstream 5. Wow. What we've been doing the whole time is changing our call sign and changing the type aircraft throughout all the flight plans. We just changed over as soon as we hit the London coast to a Gulfstream 5. Thank God. The person in the aircraft that was ahead of us, all he said was, a Gulfstream 5. Okay, gotcha. That individual did not let anything out, thank God. As we're heading into Baghdad, the President of the United States comes to the cockpit. You can see him in the picture here. He's got his normal business suit on, pants, but he's wearing a white T-shirt. Comes up behind me, does like he always does. Leaning on me, hitting me, going, hey, Tillman, what's it like bringing a commander-in-chief into a war zone? You know, I'm a professional. Oh, Mr. President, it's the best ever. Can't wait to do it. We're trucking on in there. The navigator, George Pavelko's, he's working on all kinds of things, using the military portion of the satellites, kind of honing everything in to make sure that we can find the airfield. Okay, the president then asked the question, where is this triangle they talk about, the Sunni Triangle? Well, if you look in the picture, you can see it's completely overcast below me, which was great, so that nobody in the city could see me. At the same point, though, I'm getting calls from my guys on the ground telling me, hey, the overcast is moving. You will not believe this, but the end of the runway is where the overcast ends. I mean, yeah, it's got to end somewhere, but why did it have to end there that night? So it ended there, and it was clearing a million beyond the airport, and it's slowly moving off the airport, so I don't have any cloud cover. But the president asked where the triangle's at. I then go over the interphone to George, my nav. George, throw me a bone here. He's asking where the triangle's at. George's like, sir, I am really busy skewing these satellites, and right now the tack end's 30 degrees off. It's not locking on. The satellites are saying we're 20 left. And I was like, okay, well, you know, where do you want me to keep heading? He goes, just keep heading straight. We're going to figure it out in a minute, but you figure out where that triangle's at. Got it. So I look out the window and I go, yeah, sir, the first point's right there. That's triangle. And, you know, hey, Scotty Goodwin's my co-pilot. Scotty, you see the other point? He goes, yeah, it's right there down there. And I go, what? And there's the other point of the triangle. And the president's laughing his head off. He goes, you have no clue where that triangle's at, do you? Not a clue, not a clue. He then asked the question, what's the status of the self-defense? You know, how's it going to work? And so, well, the flight engineer, he's going to handle all the self-defense. If anything starts happening, he's going to get real busy. He's going to start talking to me, explaining a lot of things to me, and, you know, we'll take care of it. The plane's heavily defended. Don't worry about it. He goes, well, what happens if we get hit? Loud thump, manned flight, as you know, it changes. So we're laughing, but then he goes, oh, that was a dumb question. And I mean, all of us professional Air Force officers at the same time. No, Mr. President, that's not a dumb question. That's a perfectly reliable, you know, that's a great question. Great question, yeah. But he laughs. But at the same point, a woman comes into the cockpit and she goes, Mr. President, it's okay to flash. He turns, he looks at her, and he goes, absolutely, but then pull those pants right back up. That was my man. He brought a lot of the tension down at that point. We brought him into Baghdad. We changed call signs and we changed type aircraft just prior to going in there so that the military would be expecting a large C-5 on a USO mission. We went ahead and landed, blacked out, came in and landed on the airport. At the end of the runway we stayed, we filled up with 14 fuel trucks supplied by the Army. Unknowingly, they were running out there. They were not happy supporting on Thanksgiving Day. The troops were sitting in the chow hall in the middle of the airfield, waiting for an unknown VIP to show up. The day prior, they'd had Senator Clinton and a few other senators show up. They assumed it was going to be the same group of folks. The president goes to the dinner. He's standing behind the partition that you see behind him right now. General Sanchez, Ambassador Bremer. They have a letter from the President of the United States. They ask the question, who should be reading it? Finally, General Sanchez says, why don't we have the president read it? The president comes around the partition. Troops go wild. Their commander-in-chief's there for dinner. That was the mission we were supposed to do. We were very successful at that mission. That's exactly what he wanted to do. The president went ahead and served the troops. The President of the United States then came back to us. As he came back to us, the plane was completely blacked out. Secret Service and an armored personnel carrier bringing the president back. They call out. They want to know if the plane is still there because they can't see it. That's not a great feeling. So we should pop a couple of green flares there so they can see where we're at. We're all wearing night vision goggles. The president comes up to the side of the plane. He goes to the big top cop. Hey, is anybody around the aircraft supporting us, any troops and all that stuff? Sure enough, we'd had a special ops team supporting the aircraft. Out in front of the aircraft, 50 cal machine gunner with a scrub brush on his helmet, sitting there. The president starts to point out to him. Big Will stops the man from pointing, stops the president. Doesn't want to give away the man's position. Big Will gives the president night vision goggles so he can see the guy. Goggles on, president just gives the kid a thumbs up, kid gives him a thumbs up, and that's all it took. Secret bond between the two men. That's what the president was about. Jumps on the plane, we take off, blast out of there. Once we level off, the president asked me to come downstairs. I come downstairs, I go in the conference room. He and his staff stand up. They thank me for a job well done. I asked the president what it was like having dinner with the troops. He said he didn't get a chance to have dinner with the troops. He said he got a chance to serve the finest men and women in the United States of America. I'll never forget it. Mission successful. What a great man, what a great mission, what a great team. Everything was successful because your products got me there, found it, even though the TACAN was off 30 degrees, we still knew exactly where we were. Subsequent trips into Baghdad, Afghanistan, president up in the cockpit with us. Last trip of the President of the United States with us, we brought him back into the Air Force One hangar. The maintenance guys pulled the window out of his office, the same window that he looked out on September 11th. The maintenance guys etched into that window the Manhattan skyline with the Twin Towers. At the top of the window, it says, "The right man at the right time. The crew of Air Force One thanks you, President Bush." I strongly believe that. I have had a lot of great honors. I was pinned on a colonel by two presidents, Bush 41 on the one wing, Bush 43 on the other wing. Can't complain. Distinguished Flying Cross in the Oval Office from the President of the United States. No complaints. Last picture they took of me is I was flying back from Waco, about to give it up to the presidential pilot number 13, and then retire and go work for Discount Tire. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing me to speak today, and thank you so much for everything you do.